get started right now. I think is it recording? Let's see. Oh,
It's
yep, we're
shows
good.
recording on my end.
All
Yeah.
right, awesome. All right, we got Marc Crovo this week. Again, this call the Real Estate Titans. We like to basically talk to real estate investors, developers, entrepreneurs, property managers, real estate brokers who I'm really passionate about. Like real estate agents don't own a lot of real estate, but we help a lot of people get rich buying and selling real estate. I would say that's true for lenders as well. So this is what I want to do is get people that are real estate brokers to buy real estate and build an investment portfolio like Mark. And like last week, we had Jeff on the call. So we recorded that call. You could check it out on our YouTube channel. You could also listen to it on the podcast, which I'll send out here. But this week we got Mark on the call. He messaged me the way I remember the story. I don't know if you probably don't remember the story the way I remember the story, because I always make, memory is an interesting thing. I watched a video on it once, and it's like we basically make shit up, right? Like me and my brother in our childhood have completely different memories, and we literally did the same thing. But anyways, long story short, Mark messaged me. She was like, hey, he said maybe it was a real estate video on Instagram. He messaged me. He's like, hey, I want to get into the game. He had one single family in Saugus at that time. He got into the game. We helped buy him a two family. We helped buy him a three family. Did you buy another two family after that?
No, you helped me sell those.
Yep. And then he 1031 exchanged those and quickly built a portfolio of about 23 units.
24 units, two
24 units.
vacancies.
I stand corrected. And you did that in how many years?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure that. I was just looking back on it.
Maybe like 5 to 7.
It about 6 years. Yeah, five to
All
six
right.
years. Yep.
So in 6 years, when he messaged me, he started with 0, and now he's at 24 units. And I'm gonna let him take over in a second, but I want to tell you guys the most impressive thing about Mark. Well, he's my mentor. I don't care if he has 2 units. This guy has 5 girls, 5 kids, and they're all under the age of what?
Oldest is 8, youngest is 2.
All right, so 5 kids under the age of 8, and no bags under his eyes, full head of hair. Like this is the guy. This is the guy. If you're a dad, you got to follow this guy. All right, tell us how the journey got started and walk us through your first investment properties and the strategy of buying small and then 1031 exchanging into bigger. So let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the intro. That was you making me sound like a king. I love it. I
You
do
are a
feel like a
king.
king though. Having 5 girls is amazing. That's what I've always once we had the first kid, it's like I want to be the best dad I could be, right? Like that's the goal. The intent and the purpose is, to be a Hall of Fame dad, right? And we talk about it all the time, Arthur. Like I'm not just saying this for the the clickbait or for your Zoom call. It's we have those talks, probably once a month at least, right? Um, and trying to having that purpose, right? Like if you have a good solid purpose, people are always asking me like, "Hey, how'd you do this? Hey, what do you do this? Hey, how do I do that? Hey, give me some advice." And it's like we can give advice all we want, but the only people that are really ready to take the advice and take action on it is the ones that have a legit purpose. They have a good why, right? Like, what's your why? Right? You hear that all the time. Ours being a Hall of Fame dad. Period. That's our why, right? Whatever we got to do to get to that spot, right? So, yeah, what I love about Arthur and David is, I went to school with Arthur. We went to Salem State together, and I think we did some like group projects together, or we had some classes together. And once sorry, I got a call coming in. Let me end
The
this.
calls always mess it up. The calls
Yeah,
mess
yeah.
it
I
up.
don't know if the screen goes off or what happens during that, but so yeah, so we went to college together, and I saw Arthur and David were doing big things, and I really appreciate their story. If you haven't heard their story, like it's the American dream right there. Amazing story where they came from and where they are now, and just by being consistent. You call Arthur, he picks up his phone. If he doesn't, I get a text right away. I feel like VIP. I hope
Yep.
everybody else gets this, but this was all the way back before I even had a property, right? I call Arthur and I get a text right away. Hey, I'll call you in a meeting right now, or at a showing, or at an open house, what have you, right? At a closing, and I always get a call back from him. So, but yeah, our first property we invested in, it was a 2-family in Lynn. I'll never forget it. Pull on the
14
street.
Larch Road.
14 Larch Road, and it's my
I
guy.
won't even forget it.
Yeah, yeah. And we pull onto the street, and it's packed. The realtor that was hosting the open house, she was like, "Oh, could you put your name on sign in for me, please?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." I go to sign in, and it's like 4 pages deep. Finally, I find an open spot where I can sign in. I'm like, "Wow, how am I going to get this deal, right? How am I going to get started in real estate and invest in?" And that's where Arthur, his expertise comes in. Everybody's using them nowadays, I'm sure, the escalation clauses. But, this was, what was it, 2018,
Yeah, I think so. That sounds about
right?
right.
Maybe even sooner. It might have been 2017. But, anyways, Arthur was like, "Hey, you really want this two family, like we to be in the game and to be in the conversation, we can put something on it called an escalation clause." And I was like, never heard of it before. That's not my expertise, not my field of study. And I'm like, yeah, let's roll with it. And that literally kept us in the game. If we just put our offer in without that, we wouldn't even have made it to the final five, final three,
Yeah.
right? And that was a huge game changer for us. I don't even know if my journey would have started, right? Like if it wasn't
Right.
for
That's how it started. A couple of things I want to say on that. Number one is a lot of people are scared to get started. So the first thing is like you could start small. Number two, a lot of people tell me today like the prices are high, the rates are high. I don't want to overbid. You actually overbid. If I remember correctly, there was like 10 other offers on that property. So
yes.
you were the highest and the best offer to get that deal. And yet still, do you remember what you paid for it?
I think we paid around 525, 515.
So 525, he gets in the game. I think he maybe put 20% down,
Mm-hmm.
gets in the game, and then he was able to sell that property. How much do we sell it for?
We sold it for over 750, I want to say.
Over 750. Okay, so this is what I want to point out for everybody on the call that's scared to get started or wants to get started. So that's say 200 grand in equity. How most people on the call, how easy is it to save 200 grand? That would take you a very long time. By getting in the game and letting real estate do the work for you, even if he's still saving another 200 grand, now he has 200 grand from a 1031 exchange. And that's how guys like him and Jeff are able to move a lot faster than everybody else. Because now you got 400 grand to buy the next property and you didn't even save it. All right, so go ahead. Back to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. So, I remember calling you, talking. We had plenty of conversations. You get family, you get friends, you get people that care about you, but they don't always give the best advice. And, I remember a family member who I really looked up to, and, they were doing well. And, he was like, "I wouldn't buy in Lynn. I have buddies I used to work with that bought in Lynn, and it just didn't work out for them. And, Lynn stuff, the tenant you're going to have to deal with, all this stuff, yada, yada, yada." And I'm like,
Yep.
we had two kids at the time, I think a third on the way, and I was looking at myself. I'm self-employed, and I'm like, used to be in the financial world right out of college, and I learned very quickly in 3 years being in the financial world as a financial advisor. The people that are the most well off are the ones that either own a business, own real estate, or both, right? So was able to start my own business. We're still in business, so 14 years of the travel baseball program. But while this was happening, and we were quickly outgrowing our house, our modest house in Saugus, we paid 375 for it. We thought we overpaid for it. Of course, everybody does when you buy your first house. And we ended up being able to build up equity. Took a HELOC out of Saugus, so we took 100,000 out of Saugus to put a down payment on the two family in Lynn, and boom, we're started. Balls rolling. And I remember sitting down on my grandmother's couch after a couple months after the deal went through, and she's like, "You look stressed." Grandmothers just always know. They just know, right? You walk in the room, you sit down, and nobody else can tell but like your grandmother, right? And she's like, "You look stressed. What's going on? How's the two family going in Lynn?" And I'm like, "It's going good." And she's like, "Well, why are you stressed?" I'm like, "Because I need another one." I'm like, if we lose one tenant, we're in the red, right? So like how we
Yeah.
look at, and how our perspective on risk, everyone's different, right? Risk, depends on your age sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on what you're able to handle. I know we have this talk all the time, Arthur, but like risk for me is if I have 100,000 sitting in a bank account, I'm stressed. because it's
Yeah.
not earning anything. It's not working for me. I need that money invested. I need to put that money somewhere. So like having the two family, being stressed out. If we lose one tenant, we're in the red. Like we're in trouble. I need another two or a three. So within a
Yeah.
year, yeah, I don't know if you remember this deal. Within a year, we still running the business, still am, today. And I was just about to go out to baseball practice. Arthur calls. He's like, "Hey, you got to come check this three family out." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So we meet there. He's like, "Listen," he's like, "this thing's gonna go. Like they're ready to accept an offer. They're gonna make their final decision tonight." We literally walked through two out of the three units. Weren't able to see all three. That's typical. Um, and we had to make a decision that night. We sat there with the realtor in one of the empty units, and Arthur was just basically worked him to the point where he just told us what number we needed to be at. And we're like, seriously, like this guy, like let us know, like pretty much what number. He's like,
I
he's a
remember
part time.
that.
You're like, he's a part time realtor. He doesn't do this full time. It's just is what it is,
I
right?
think it was his first deal actually,
It might have been.
or it was in the beginning. Yeah, I remember that kid. Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
funny.
like, all right, done. Like deal. Like I think we went 580, 575, whatever it was, three family in Lynn, like good, let's go. Had already paid off the HELOC from the year prior, and I was ready to set up another one, pull another 125 this time out of Saugus, to get the second investment going. So then I drive off to baseball and I'm like, I think this deal's done. I'm like, this is great. Like Arthur's the man. Can't believe it. Like we literally walked in and we're negotiating with whatever his best offer is, and we're able to, match it or better it or what have
All
you.
right.
And
A
we did.
couple of things I want to uncover there for people. So, because me and Robert were talking about this and Leo in the beginning of the call, is you're taking money, right? This is where the real estate does the work for you. You can take money out of your primary residence or your heat or your investment property in the form of a HELOC, right? He bought that property, the second three family. Then he's not going out buying new cars. He's paying that off, right? From the investments, he's paying off the HELOC. Now that 100 grand or 200 grand, you could use that again to get another property with 20% down. So you could rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then Ron had a question. Ron, at the end we do Q&A, so you could jump in and ask. But he was asking, did you do any improvements? Did you improve the property?
On the two family, the
Yeah, or
first
the two
one,
or the three, yeah.
both of, I mean, both of them. Like whenever we buy a property, I mean, we got five girls, right? My thing to my wife, and my wife has the same view as well. Is basically like, hey, like we're raising five girls. Like the last thing we want is they're gonna lease our name, until they get married, right? So like the last thing we want is them to grow up and find out from somebody that dad or mom was a dirtbag, right? Like,
Hmm.
so we do our best to do right by people. We have good core values, etc. So when we bought that two family, I knew because I had just done a lot of research, reading books, podcasts, etc., educating myself, having conversations with Arthur, David, etc., on real estate investing. I knew we were putting too much into our first property in Lynn, but we wanted to basically. I'm self managing the units myself, so I wanted to have a sense of ownership, a sense of pride in each tenant that went in there. So we redid all the floors, we painted everything inside, outside, etc. Like we made the place, yeah, we absolutely, did what we had to do, to make the place top notch.
Yeah. So, and you the other thing that's impressive for you is you always got like high rents. Like even with Section 8, I know you always managed it yourself, the rental increase. So you always push the rents up significantly to make that money. So that was great for you and impressive for you. But the other thing I want to mention for everybody on this call, and if you're just starting out, like you're gonna make mistakes. Like David and I will tell you, like we renovated one of our units, spent like 50 grand on a crazy renovation just to get $200 more in rent, and the other unrenovated unit still got 2,800. So that was kind of a mistake, for lack of a better word, or a learning lesson. So I'm sure you have some of these mistakes that came up, but the thing is, they don't kill you, right? You learn from them. You move on. You make better decisions next time. Were there any mistakes you made early on with those multifamilies? Like, do you feel like
the
you could have got management, or did you feel like that was good because you learned? What were some of the lessons or mistakes that you learned?
biggest mistake was not getting started earlier and not buying more, right? Like early is just buy, right? Acquire as much as you can, as often as you can. If you can buy when it's a tough buyer's market, good. Like you're ahead of the game, right? Like you can always refinance. You can this you have leverage, right?
Yeah.
If you just sit there and idle and just wait for the perfect deal to come across your desk, it's probably not going to happen, right? So like that was
Right.
probably my biggest mistake, was not starting early. I think the courage I got to make the first deal was having the third kid on the way, quickly outgrowing our house in Saugus. And then also, once we got to the 5 units and I was self-managing everything, now I'm at a point where I think we had 4 kids now at this point, where I'm like, I need to leverage, my resources, and no one wants to really manage 5 units in Lynn. I need to get bigger. And that's where we grew again, to get bigger into 2 1031s. But yeah, that would be my biggest thing was, yeah, you make some small mistakes here or there, like, oh man, like maybe we could have vetted the tenants better or this, that, or the other thing. But early on, I think we did a good job making everybody feel like, they were being heard. We care, about our property, we care about them. So yeah, the biggest mistake I see a lot of people is just not taking that first step.
Yeah,
The experience gained is amazing. Like there's times where we have some tough cash flow months or some, fires we got to put out, and that, Kara will look at me, I'll look at her, and, she'll say something like, oh man, that's crazy that happened. And I'll say, you know what? I would rather be dealing with this than not having the properties, not being in the game. Like I'd rather have to deal with that. Um,
for sure. Now, so we talked about property management, and the point I want to make is like for us, we're into business. We manage property. I know I'm crazy, but I kind of like it. I don't mind managing. We manage over like 30 units, pretty easy for me. Like I'm into business full time, but it's not for everybody. And sometimes what stops people from getting into game is the fact that they have to manage property themselves. I know some people who manage like 300 units themselves, and some people get stressed out by managing 2 units. And there's the key. When Mark got to the point where he was like, hey, I got 5 units, 4 kids at home. He decided that that part of the business, he already learned it by doing it himself. He needed to leverage out. By leveraging it out and getting property management and paying for it, he was able to grow and build on more units, right? Because that would become, he probably realized that would become a constraint because you're like, hey, I can't manage, I'm managing 5. I want to get to 10. If I had to manage 10, I'll pull my hair out. So that's very, very smart. Leo said, what kind of maintenance do you take on yourself or pass on to the tenants when you started? For example, snow, grass, repair, stuff like that.
Whatever I can do myself, I'll do myself. But I also have to be cautious of what does that look like? So like, yeah, it sounds good. Oh, I'll handle the landscape and I'll handle the snow removal, or I'll handle this or that project. But at the end of the day, right, like I'm a dad, and you got kids at home and you want to be the best dad you can. So like if you're going a little too much, a little too hard, and it costs you like, the next day you're dragging, but your kids need you, or what have you. So like, yeah, I try to be cautious of like what I can handle, what I can't. So like painting, we outsource some painting, we outsource the floors. But we also did some small painting when we needed to. If there was just one room that needed to be done, like, I might grab cousin Mike. Hey, hit up cousin Mike. Let's go up there. I remember we did one paint job that took us forever. I think it might have been his first time ever using a brush, to be honest. But hey, it's another guy for the job, right? And we ordered some. What did we get? We got some sushi. And we're there late, painting or whatever, and but it's good quality time and it's all experience. Fast forward, and cousin Mike now owns a 4 unit,
Right.
in Tewksbury, and he lives in it, and he's a landlord now, and it's like you look at just experiences and who you touch and who you talk to and where they end up. It's pretty interesting journey, and it's fun to watch. That's where I gain a lot of reward from too, is seeing other people go out and actually take action, actually start doing it. Arthur says all the time, it's you don't feel bad for, like, you don't like play the compare game, or be jealous that somebody else is doing this or doing that. Just like there's enough sunshine for everybody, right? So like
Right. There's plenty of deals and not everybody loves the same deals. What would you say to
it's go
somebody
out and help each other out.
What would you say to somebody who's just thinking about starting, but they have 0 units or maybe 2 or 4, and they're really scared to get into the game and go to the next level? But they're on this call, they're interested, like, what would you say to them in terms of motivation?
I would say just, I mean, I would say do it. You know, I just you just take that step, even though, no matter how small that first step seems, or like, oh man, I only can manage a condo, and I'm barely gonna break even or whatever. It's like I remember having a conversation with my little sister, Arthur. She bought the condo in
Yeah.
Peabody, and then she moved out, and she's renting it, and she's like, I want to sell because she had a tough time finding a tenant, right? And she was considering selling, and I said, do yourself a favor, go on Zillow. She's like, all right, I'm on Zillow. I'm like, type in your address. I'm like, what was the 30-day jump in the building? Like, what's it worth? Now 30 days later or whatever. And she was like $7,750 or whatever, right? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you held on to the unit. Yes, no one's in there yet. You're still looking for a renter. It's part of the game. You'll find one. Um, but it just went up $7,750 in equity.
Right.
Like, you can't get that out of your bank account. Like, you put
Right.
40,000 in your bank account, it's going to take a while to grow, right? If
Yeah.
that 40,000 is in real estate, but that real estate's going up every month, it's like, even if you're only breaking even on the property, or what have you, or you feel like like she was losing at the time. I think her mortgage was around 1,800 or what have you. So she felt like she was losing 1,800 a month, and I'm like, you're not. I'm like, you're not. I'm like, the property value's going up, and you'll be kicking yourself if you sell it right now.
I
Um,
I think one of the things I always talk about, which I really didn't understand at a deep level till I started investing in real estate with my brother, is like most people think of like one factor in real estate, and they think that that's why they're buying it. So, for example, some people appreciation, which is what you just said, right? The value goes up over time, always. Other people, it's cash flow, right? I make 200 to 500 a unit. Like Jeff last week is in the cash flow game. But what most people don't realize is you get a crazy tax benefit, which is called depreciation, and you could also use the 1031 exchange to defer taxes. And the other one that I find, like I look at my numbers every month with my brother. The other one I never thought about is like every month the bank statement comes in, and I owe less and less principal, but the tenants are making payment. So this is what I was talking to Ron in my office the other day. Is like those factors working together is what makes it so powerful. Because if you take any one of those away, you will still make money over time. And what I mean by that, like our building with the 4 family, if it never goes up in value for 20 years, which is impossible, and rents never go up, it still will be paid off in 20 years, right? So I just basically made $1.5 million with somebody else paying the rent. But you save money on your taxes, you get depreciation. So appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, and the tax benefits and the debt pay down working together is what makes real estate such a great investment. Um, what do you think about that? And what factor do you love most about real estate?
Yeah, I mean, the factor about real estate I love most is like, there's some cues out there like, oh, focus on building your net worth, right? And you focus on building your net worth, things are going to work out, right? And my wife, she basically gave me her blessing, like, hey, just go with it, right? This is what I want to do. This is, trying to create another bucket of income, for the family. Also, leave a legacy. Also, build up our net worth in the process. This is where I want to go with this. And she's like, just do it. I was like, all right. So we went for it. But it's just, if you just focus on building up your net worth, you're going to be in a better position. So like, we're in a position now where we're probably going to go back to the banks because we've created some leverage for ourselves. We the 2 family, we 1031 into a 9 unit in Amesbury, and then the 3 family, we 1031 into a 15 unit in Manchester, New Hampshire. So now we're at the 24 units. When we bought these buildings, the rents were low. At Amesbury, especially, there were a lot of vacancies and the rents were really low. We bought it off a special master. Not sure if you want to stop and tell them what that is, or for
You
anybody.
you can.
Okay, so a special master, basically, it was a case where there's 2 people that owned the property. Um, they couldn't agree that the sky was blue. even if the sky was blue, right? So like an attorney steps in, a special master steps in to basically sell the house for them. Just simplest terms. I hope that is that cool.
No, that's good.
All right, cool. So it makes it tough, right? That's a deal that a lot of people ran away from. It was a $1.2 million deal they were asking for. They weren't gonna, take anything less. Somebody offered. We found out Arthur's hard work and due diligence. He found out somebody offered $1 million, and they wouldn't even call him back. So like they were pretty stuck in their number. We went in. I talked to Arthur about it. He's like, "This is going to be a difficult deal, but that's where the opportunity is." A lot of people are walking away from this deal because this guy's very difficult to deal with. Um,
That
and it's,
happens.
yeah, so we were just like, all right, buckle up, and I think, I don't know if you remember, but we had a P&S signed, and you were able to negotiate where we were able to have an inspection. And then after everything was all said and done, signed legally, like this is our agreement, they pulled the inspection from us. They're like, no, we're not letting you do. If you do the inspection, even though we had it like lined up and everything, like if you do the inspection, we're walking away from the deal, blowing the deal up. Remember that? And I was like, all right, what do we do, Arthur? Arthur's like, it's up to you. I was like, all right, I've walked this building enough. Like, I think we might have maybe brought someone with us one day for a last visit that might know what they're looking at.
Yeah,
um,
challenges definitely always come up. And you kind of answered this, but what type of properties did you 1031 exchange in, and what do you owe today? Leo asked, which is, I believe, a 9 unit and the 11 unit, right?
a 9 and a 15. Yeah. So we
Oh,
exchanged
nine.
into a 9. The 9 is a commercial, it's a mixed use. So it has one commercial unit and
Yeah.
8 residential. Um, we bought for, about 1.2. I think we owe around 840 for it, let's say.
Yeah.
I just had it, I just had it basically like looked at, and I had an evaluation done on it, and they're like conservatively, it's 200 a door, so it's like worth 1.8 right now conservatively.
That's
Um,
great.
I'm sure someone would be willing to pay more once they got in there and they saw the rents that we're getting out of there too. There's a 2-bed, 1-bath. We're getting over 2,700 for.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, so like we're doing really well there, but the opportunity there is to leverage with the bank. I think we go into the bank and we say, hey, we did everything we said we were going to do. This is where the rents were. This is what we bought it at. Look at all the improvements we've done, all the upgrades to the systems, to the just the appeal of the buildings. There's 2 more units. We have tenants we inherited that we want, when those tenants leave or move on, then we redo the unit right away. We don't wait around. You just redo it, and then you can get higher market rent, obviously, if that's how you operate. But going back to the banks is probably where we're our next option, where we go back and we say, hey, this is where we're at right now. This is what we did with the
Absolutely.
building. We know what we're doing. We're proving that we can do what we do what we're going to say, and then maybe they'll want to put a cross collateral loan on both the buildings or all 3 buildings we have, or
Again, tapping into that equity to try to buy more stuff.
exactly.
It's 10 o'clock, and I got a bunch of people that sent a couple questions, so I'm just gonna open it up for questions. Whatever didn't get answered, you could hop in. I think Ron had a couple questions, so shoot.
Hey, good morning.
Go
Good morning.
Thanks for being here, Mark.
Yeah.
Do you have a time frame? You using time frames at all when you decide about holding the properties, or are you just planning on keeping them forever as long as they cash flow and you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, great question. So no, on timeline, I have a internal timeline with goals like, okay, we want to replace my wife's income so that she doesn't have to work. We got her down to 3 days a week, a couple of years back. And then this year she got an offer to go back to 5 days a week with summers off, and it was an offer that we looked at each other and were like, just do it for a year or two, and then let's try to get you out of there. But yeah, so we're trying income replacement for her, myself eventually too. So like our
Mm,
goal is to be financially free, where we are making enough money through the real estate where most of our expenses, or all our expenses and cost of living, is taken care of, and then we can continue to try to build up our wealth, right? So no, I think this makes sense. If it's not cash flowing and you have an opportunity to make money and leverage the building by selling it and buy bigger or buy something that will cash flow for you, then that's probably the route. But if it's cash flowing and it's doing really well, it's hard for me to try to move on from the building.
Right. I,
And
I've heard
yeah,
some
go ahead.
people I've heard some people say like basically actually Jeff was talking about this when I had dinner with him a couple of days ago. He was saying basically he sells off the stuff that's not performing well and is high and intensive to manage, and then 1031s into bigger and better buildings. So always looking at your portfolio and just making adjustments is what he said, which is kind of like what you did in a way, because once the two family had enough equity, you 1031 into something that makes a lot more money in terms of cash flow.
Yeah, 1000%, 1000%. So, and I want to retire off of my debt, not my equity. So a lot of people may like, yeah, you bought a 3-family, awesome. I'm going to pay this 3-family down and then I'll be able to retire.
Yeah.
It's like, well, dude, that's going to take so long. It's like, just sell the 3-family and buy a 6 or a 9, like buy bigger or buy more, then keep doing it, and a lot of people will maybe say, okay, now this is a portfolio, I have 24 units. I'm not like satisfied with that. It's like, it's great. It's doing well. We're cash flowing, good. But I don't want to wait 20, 25 years for everything to be paid off to have to retire in the equity. I want to continue to grow.
Right. Or another way, I was talking to somebody else. They were like, my dad goes, this is not me. I was talking to investors. Like, my dad asked me, how do you sleep with $20 million worth in debt? And he's like a baby, because the property values are like 50 million. So he's like, who cares about the $20 million in debt that I have? Right. Because
Yeah.
the equity is there. And then
Mm.
Leo and Robert were asking, how do you feel about Section 8 or raft?
We've experienced with both. Our first or second tenant in Lynn was Section 8. Andover Housing or North Andover Housing, they were amazing. Every housing is different as far as what they're willing to give you in rent. Their processes were all different. I think they're trying to get the processes to be similar, but the processes are all over the place. Yeah, we have no problem with Section 8. It's easier when you collect and rent, obviously. And I think that there's quality people on Section 8 or self-pay. It's just, yeah, we don't have a issue. We enjoy,
Mhm.
the Section 8 tenants for sure, the vouchers.
Awesome. Any,
I have a
Rob,
question. Hey, Mark, when you buy a new property and you're looking at the rent roll and you know you have to go up in rent, what does that process feel like and look like? Is it hey everybody, rents are going up $500 a month, like all of a sudden, or are you like staggering it up and you let them know ahead of time, and are you running into problems with tenants in that regard? Um, yeah, what do you think of
Great,
that?
that's a
great
great
question.
question, because I know you're great at increasing rents.
Yeah, we were just talking about, rent increases again, because when you have Section 8, you want to stay on top of that. Every year you should be asking for a rent increase. Um, and this process is, like I said, so like some of those housing authorities, they may be like, okay, we need to know written to us 2 months in advance. We want it written what you're asking for a rent increase. Some of them you can just call them up or email them. I don't know if you remember the one we had, Arthur. I
Yeah.
talked to you and David. I was like, hey, I think we should go up in rent. And you were like, okay, what do you want? What do you want? It was a 2-family, the 2-family in Lynn, 2 bed, 1 bath. And you were like, yeah, I think like 2,100 is cool. Like that would be amazing if you got that for Lynn. This was 4 or 5 years ago, right?
I remember
And
this.
and I think we asked for 2,400,
Yeah.
and they just the next month it just came in.
And that's what
It's
I
just,
like about, yeah, that's what I like about you. That's what I learned from you too, is like, you always ask for more, you ask for aggressively, and sometimes you did get it. I've
yeah,
tried that strategy multiple times, guys. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But even if you don't get it, you usually get a little more than you would have thought. So ask for the rent increase, and then ask for, like Mark does, ask for an aggressive number and you might get it. Any other questions or comments for Mark? Anybody else want to jump in? Yeah,
Morning.
go ahead. Yeah, good morning.
Hope everybody's doing well. I would also add, in addition to what Mark said, on your market, your cash paying tenants, do regular increases. You really have to. make sure you give them 150% service so that they have nothing to squawk about, but always do the rent increases regularly. I have a lot of investors that come to me and talk about selling a property, and some of them are people that had bought property off of me, and they didn't do as I said. They felt bad raising the rent, and I said, well, when somebody has an issue, how fast do you respond? Immediately. So if you're responding immediately, that's unheard of with at least 50% of the people as landlords. You deserve the regular rent increases, and people will pay it if you respond and take care of them. Arthur, the size of my portfolio, and we do it
Yeah,
globally. We do 15, 20 at a time, and we just give them regular increases, and take into consideration what type of tenant they are. But I get very, very little pushback on rent increases, because when they have a problem, we address it immediately.
If you guys don't know Steve, he was on the call a couple weeks ago, and we actually ended up, before we even had this format, we ended up doing it impromptu, and I found out how many units he had. So we did an interview, which I didn't record. So I got to get you back on here, and we got to grab coffee and lunch so I could record it. But tell him how many units you have, own and manage.
So I own and manage. I have a partner in part of the portfolio. We total combined units is about 450 or so, and half of them are room in houses, sober living, and half of them are multifamily residential.
So just to show you guys how big you could take it by starting small, you got real heavy hitters on this call. Like 450 units is no joke. So at this point, like the income you make off of that is plenty, right? You don't even need to do anything else. And you have one
Exactly. And
partner?
I'm sorry,
You have one partner?
I have one in part of the portfolio,
Yeah.
about 190 units. He manages those units actually. But all it takes is one property at a time. And like I said, on that first time I was on, you decide what you want for a portfolio. You want 5 units, you can retire on 5 units once they're paid off. If you want to do 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000, it's all up to the person, right? So from where I hear you stand, you've got basically generational income and assets that at your point, and you can take it from there and do what I did, which is just get the properties up to the maximum value, 1031 exchange, take that money and keep dumping it into bigger properties, and you can get to 500 or 1,000 in no time. It's just a matter of finding the right properties, and the buyers are out there. I mean, multifamily is the best asset to own across the board, I believe. The pay down, you were talking earlier about mortgage pay down. As you own these properties longer, as everybody knows, that the principal pay down gets higher and higher. So that's a whole other income that you're not paying taxes on. It's actually there. You just can't really touch it unless you refinance, but it gets bigger and bigger as the longer you hold it. And the cost of it is you gotta manage or hire a property manager, and you can do either. Some people just rather be hands off.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. So Ron asked actually a great question. Will you buy property anywhere that makes sense, or do you prefer local properties? Would you buy properties in other states and move remotely? I have my answer to this, but I'll let both of you answer it your own way.
I mean, local's easier, right, for anybody. But yeah, I mean, if it makes money, it makes money, as long as you think you have the trusted resources to manage it for you. So if you're going to buy something in Indiana, you better hope you have some good property managers out there, or whatever else you may need. But yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I think that's definitely true, Mark. It could fall apart quickly if you're out of state and you have a good property manager, or you think you do, and then you don't really know what's going on. You follow those numbers really closely, because when it can go south quickly if the manager's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But I'll be 58 next month, and I want close, easy peasy. So all of my multifamily stuff is a 30-minute or less ride for me to get to, or one of my team to get to. So we self-manage and self-maintain. So we don't, I don't want something an hour and a half away. I had a friend that's possibly looking to get into investing, and the first one he sends me is in Springfield, and he lives in the northern Mass area. And you're talking an hour and a half or so, 2 hours with traffic maybe, or to get there to manage something, and you want to manage it yourself. That's like setting yourself up for failure. So try to be within a reasonable distance to be able to deal with it appropriately if something comes up.
I think I agree. I like to personally see and get to my properties, and I think it's a lot easier to learn the business by being able to see the property, manage it. You can raise rents, you can learn the business, you know what you're getting into. If you buy something out of state, you have no idea what's going on, and you don't even know how to run a property because it's your first one. I think that could be a bad idea. It could end badly. But there's obviously always opportunities, and if you have the right partnerships, right? If you have the right people you can trust, I think Mark said that's the best. Ron had a question. I don't think Mark Mark, you didn't start before 09, right? In 2000.
Oh yeah, no, I saw his question, or at least the first part of it. I know where he's going with it. Yeah, I have not owned real estate during any downturns.
But I bet you Steve has. Yeah,
So like I just look at it and say, if you're not cash flowing, you might be in trouble in that situation. But as long as your buildings are cash flowing, and then there's a downturn, I think that it's a minimal hit, right?
Yeah, and Jeff, who we had on the call last week, hasn't either. But I bet you Steve has. So you own property in the downturn, right?
Yeah, I've owned them. I've rehabbed them. And during like the 08 to 12, 14. Is when I let go of some of the properties I wish I would have just kept. I fixed them up. I got the tenants and got the rents up to par. I was cash flowing, but then I sold to do a development in Hampton, and I sold some really, really good assets that were cash flowing because my cost basis was good. Right after I sold them, most of them were in Chelsea and Lawrence. The market blew up. So if you had bought right in those times and you were holding them and they were cash flowing, I think Mark, you said this earlier. If you have properties that are cash flowing, try to keep them, because figure out a way to pull money out to buy more assets, because if you know what you have, and as we go on in time, more people know about this. There's less inventory for all these people that are trying to buy, so your opportunities going forward are becoming harder to grab. Then it becomes part of your network, right? Like how many people how many people know you can perform, and how many people would bring you in if they have an opportunity that they can't do in order to capture it. But the deals are not like they were at those times. I mean, you could name your price back then, because they were a dime a dozen, and there weren't all these network groups and all the stuff online that now you have these tools available. I didn't have that. I was just a sole operator, beating my head against the wall sometimes, rehabbing and doing it, and I made it work because I did grow it and didn't fall in those down times, thank God. But I could have gone the other way. I could have gone bankrupt at the same time. But now you have these tools, and you have all this information and all these other investors that are doing well, that are happy to share, the story and the information to help others succeed. And that's kind of what I'm about. Opportunities are still there. You gotta know what you're looking at, have the right people helping you find what you're looking for and what you're looking at. If you don't know the details, and have the balls to take the deals down. Because if you sit, like I heard earlier, if you sit back and look at the deals go by and second guess everything, you're never going to get in the game, and you're never going to be able to grow, because you have to take the action on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to buy real estate, put the tools in place and use them to figure out how to take it down. Figure it out later.
Yeah.
some of it.
That's great stuff, guys. If you have any
Yeah.
other questions, chime in now. We ran a little long this week, but we could go to, I think this goes till about 10:30 anyway, so we could go to 10:30. I put some links in the notes. So we got the podcast, The Modern American Dream. This show will be out probably by tomorrow. You can go back and listen to Jeff's story. Before the age of 30, he built a portfolio of 150 units. Also, if you're a real estate agent, check out our school page, which is basically we're going to teach you how to make money, save and invest that money, and then you could get in the game by buying real estate. So it all starts with making money first, then get your first property, and you could go from there. Any final words of wisdom or any questions for our, we actually ended up getting 2 for the price of 1 at the end here.
Awesome. I would say just go for it. Like Steve just alluded to, you can go out there and try to study and try to know it all before you get started and feel like you're super prepared and maybe over prepared, but once you get started, something's going to hit you in the face. Right? Just go out and get started, because the actual life experience is way better than any book you're going to read or podcast or resource you
Speaking
have.
of that, give us your top book and your top podcast.
Man, I'm going to go Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because as soon as I read that book, I remember in the back of the book, I wrote it in there. That same year I started the business that we're operating for, going on 14 years now, year 14. So, and it's something I'm passionate about. So, yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I still try to read his books. We got the cash flow game that we play with our kids. He has a little cash flow board game just to kind of get the wheels turning for them. We've only played it a couple times, but as they get older, maybe they'll want to play it more and understand it. But yeah.
Awesome. And podcast?
Arthur and David's, right? Like, just
thank
it
you.
all starts with being grateful. The most successful people I've realized in life seem to have a level of gratitude a little bit higher than the common folk, right? So be uncommon amongst the uncommon, right? So like, it's uncommon to find someone that's so grateful for the littlest things. These conversations we have, Arthur being able to pick up the phone, the resources you have, like, so grateful for that 2-family in the escalation clause and leveraging Arthur's experience. That's how we got started, and having the conversations on the side, countless hours of bouncing ideas off your head, or should I do this, should I do that, so yeah, I think gratitude's key.
That's awesome.
You could pick out the phonies really easily. Just see who's posting, stacks of cash, fancy cars, luxury stuff, and that's their MO. That's how you can tell who not to look up to, or who to hang around. The humble people that are giving back and doing good things and helping others for no cost, right? That's the real authentic people that you want to be a part of and be around.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great advice. Ron said, stay humble, baby. All right,
Yeah.
guys, I'll let
Awesome.
everybody, any last words? Anybody else?
Yeah, just thank you guys. And if anybody ever wants to get together, let's get a little group together for a coffee, a beer, whatever.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours and days and probably find some good connections. So
we could do it here in my office in Andover. We'll do a real estate investor meetup group. Bring out all the legends.
perfect. I'm down. Let me know when.
All right, guys. I'll send everybody the
All right,
video.
good seeing everyone.
I'll send everybody the podcast. Steve, thanks for hopping on. Mark, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Everybody who's
Thanks,
hopped on and
guys.
asked great questions, thank you guys.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Arthur.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.